In the vastness of night, our planet glows like a fragile jewel, an oasis of life adrift in an endless ocean of darkness. Every star scattered across the sky is a burning sun, and around many of them, worlds orbit in silent rhythm. If numbers are to be trusted, then billions of those worlds should cradle oceans, atmospheres, and perhaps even living beings gazing upward as we do. And yet, despite decades of searching, not a single voice has answered our call. The silence of the universe is deafening. This silence is not an empty absence. It is a mystery, a paradox that unsettles scientists, philosophers, and dreamers alike. If life is common, as probability insists, why have we heard nothing? If the cosmos teems with civilizations, why do they remain hidden? The question first surfaced in a casual conversation over lunch in 1950, when physicist Enrico Fermi paused, looked around the table, and asked a simple, haunting line. Where is everybody? In those 3 words, the great riddle of our age was born. The Fermi paradox is more than a scientific puzzle. It is an existential wound. On one side lies the immense likelihood of alien life. On the other, the unbroken wall of silence that greets our every attempt to find it. Between the two spreads a gulf that invites both wonder and unease. Some imagine that civilizations, like stars, flare briefly before extinguishing, never long enough to bridge the cosmic distances. Others see humanity as too young to be noticed, like a whisper drowned in the roar of galactic time. But there is another possibility, stranger than either extinction or immaturity. What if the silence is not silence at all? What if it is deliberate? A chosen withholding, a silence born not of absence, but of intention? This idea, unsettling and strangely intimate, is known as the zoo hypothesis. Proposed in the 1970s, it imagines Earth as part of a vast experiment, a natural preserve overseen by civilizations far older and more advanced than our own. We are the observed, not the observers. Like animals in a zoo, we live our lives unaware of the invisible gaze that watches from beyond the glass. The hypothesis is not about UFO sightings, nor about whispered conspiracies. It is about perspective, about the possibility that we are not alone, and yet not free to know it. Imagine for a moment, to beings capable of traversing interstellar space, we might appear primitive, violent, unpredictable. To them, our wars and politics may seem like the scuffles of children. Perhaps they watch to learn from us, to see whether we will survive our adolescence as a species. Or perhaps they watch with the detached curiosity we reserve for ants, fascinated by patterns, but disinterested in individual lives. Here lies the tension that will guide our journey, between wonder and silence, evidence and absence, myth and science. On one side, the cosmic silence that drives us to despair, whispering that we are alone in the universe. On the other hand, the eerie suggestion that this silence is not emptiness at all, but a veil drawn deliberately across our senses. It is a veil that raises unsettling questions. If they are out there, why would they choose to remain hidden? Is their intent protective, shielding us from knowledge we are not ready to bear? Or is it indifferent, keeping us ignorant for their own convenience? Worse still, could it be malevolent, the way a predator studies its prey from the shadows? The zoo hypothesis challenges the very way we think about contact. We often imagine alien life in dramatic terms, great ships descending from the skies, messages carried on radio waves, dazzling displays of technology. But what if contact has already happened, invisibly? What if the experiment began long before we learned to look outward? To consider this possibility is to stand at the edge of an abyss, peering into the unsettling thought that we are already part of a drama we did not choose. Yet the hypothesis is not only about aliens. It is also about us. It forces us to confront our own tendencies, to watch, to study, to control. Humans have created zoos, reserves, and sanctuaries. We have observed tribes from a distance, choosing when to interfere and when to remain hidden. If we behave this way, is it not possible that others would too? The hypothesis holds up a mirror, reflecting not only the cosmos, but our own ethics, our own capacity for curiosity, domination, and restraint. And so we begin this exploration not with certainty, but with questions that blend science with philosophy, skepticism with wonder. What does it mean if the silence of the universe is an act of will? What does it mean if we are being observed, silently judged, perhaps even guided? And most profoundly, what does it mean for our story as a species, as conscious beings standing on the fragile surface of a pale blue dot? This opening curtain reveals both beauty and dread. Beauty in the thought that we are part of a greater cosmic narrative. Dread in the suspicion that we may never know the full script. Between these two emotions lies the space we will explore. A space where science meets speculation, where probability confronts imagination, and where the human longing for contact collides with the possibility of eternal silence. Our journey begins here, beneath the watchful stars, with a paradox that refuses to let us rest. Ahead lies an inquiry into probability and presence, silence and shadow. Ahead lies the attempt to untangle whether the absence of evidence is evidence of absence, or the most profound evidence of all. We will move next into the heart of the Fermi paradox itself, unraveling the numbers, the science, and the staggering odds that make this silence so haunting. For if the zoo hypothesis proposes a hidden gaze, the paradox it seeks to solve is the silence of a cosmos that by all logic should already have spoken. The universe does not whisper, it roars with possibility. Every point of light in the night sky is not just a star, but a system. Many hold planets, some rocky, some gaseous, some shrouded in atmospheres where chemistry dances in ways both familiar and alien. If even a fraction of these worlds cradle life, then the cosmos should be vibrant, alive with civilizations, each building, expanding, reaching out. The numbers suggest not loneliness, but company. Yet the silence remains absolute. This silence was given its sharpest form in 1950, when physicist Enrico Fermi posed his famous question during a casual lunch with colleagues. Where is everybody? It was not a grand speech, not an academic lecture, but a simple, offhand remark, and it cut to the core of one of the greatest mysteries of existence. Fermi knew the numbers. He understood the scale. With hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, with billions of years of cosmic time available for life to emerge, the odds favored abundance. And yet, when he looked upward, the sky was mute. To understand the paradox, we must first see the mathematics that paints a universe brimming with life. In 1961, astronomer Frank Drake formalized this intuition into an equation. The Drake equation is not a precise tool, but a framework, a way to structure the probabilities of life and intelligence in the galaxy. It multiplies factors, the number of stars formed each year, the fraction that have planets, the proportion of planets that are habitable, the chance that life emerges, that intelligence evolves, that civilizations develop technology, and finally, the span of time they release detectable signals into space. When the equation is filled with reasonable values, even conservative ones, the results are staggering. The galaxy should hold not one or two, but thousands, perhaps millions of civilizations capable of communication. And that's just our galaxy. Across the observable universe, with its 2 trillion galaxies, the potential becomes almost incomprehensible. To believe that Earth is the only stage for intelligence is to stand against mathematics itself. Yet, mathematics collides with reality. For more than half a century, we have listened. Projects like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, have swept the skies, tuning into radio frequencies, waiting for a signal that never arrives. Our telescopes grow sharper, our sensors more refined, and still, the cosmic airwaves remain empty. The optimism of probability meets the void of silence. This tension, the clash between expectation and experience, is the beating heart of the Fermi paradox. The universe should be singing with voices. Instead, it is quiet. If there are countless civilizations, where are their signals, their probes, their artifacts? Why do we see no evidence of them at all? Some scientists argue that the answer may lie in the distances themselves. The galaxy is vast beyond imagination, 100,000 light-years across. Civilizations could be scattered like islands in a boundless ocean, each too far from the other to make contact. Radio waves weaken over space. Technology may not last long enough to span centuries, and signals might simply fade into the cosmic background before reaching us. To believe this is to imagine a galaxy filled with isolated voices, each calling into the dark, but never overlapping. Others point to the possibility of technological mismatches. Perhaps we are listening in the wrong way, on the wrong frequencies, or for the wrong kind of communication. We scan for radio signals, but what if advanced civilizations use technologies that lie beyond our imagination? Neutrino communication, quantum entanglement, or dimensions of physics we have yet to discover. To them, our searches may appear as primitive as trying to hear a digital broadcast with a stone drum. The silence, then, is not absence, but ignorance. But the most unsettling explanations lie in the concept of the Great Filter. This idea suggests that somewhere along the evolutionary chain from chemistry to consciousness lies a nearly impossible barrier, a filter that almost no civilization can pass. Life might be common, but intelligence is rare. Intelligence might arise, but technological survival is almost non-existent. If the filter is behind us, if we have already passed the nearly impossible leap from non-life to life, then we are rare, perhaps unique, a cosmic miracle. But if the filter lies ahead, then our silence is not comforting, but terrifying. It would mean that civilizations reach a certain point, perhaps ours, and then almost inevitably collapse. Nuclear war, climate collapse, artificial intelligence gone rogue, the forms may vary, but the outcome is the same: extinction before interstellar maturity. The paradox deepens when we turn to modern discoveries. In the past 2 decades, astronomers have found thousands of exoplanets, many orbiting within their stars' habitable zones, the Goldilocks regions where liquid water can exist. Some are super-Earths, some mirror our planet in uncanny ways. The evidence for potentially life-bearing worlds has shifted from speculation to certainty. We now know that habitable planets are not rare jewels, but common stones scattered throughout the galaxy. Each discovery sharpens the paradox. If life can arise easily, then where are the civilizations it should produce? Here is where science brushes against philosophy. The silence of the stars is not just an observational puzzle. It is a mirror held up to our existence. It forces us to ask whether we are exceptional or doomed, whether the universe is brimming with life or fundamentally hostile to it. Each explanation is unsatisfying, for each raises new mysteries. If the galaxy is empty, why did Earth succeed? If the galaxy is full, why are we alone in knowing it? And yet, within this uncertainty, whispers of speculation grow. Perhaps civilizations are out there, but they choose not to reveal themselves. Perhaps they have already seen us, already measured our progress, and decided that now is not the time for contact. This thought, once fringe, has gained traction as the silence lengthens. It sets the stage for the zoo hypothesis, the idea that our isolation is not natural, but deliberate. But before we cross that threshold, we must pause on the nature of silence itself. Is silence emptiness, or is it the soft veil of something concealed? When we walk through a forest, the quiet does not mean absence. It means life is watching from the shadows, unseen. Could the cosmos be the same? Are we mistaking deliberate quiet for non-existence? The Fermi paradox holds us in its grip because it is not merely about others, it is about us. It is about whether intelligence inevitably destroys itself, whether survival is the exception, and whether we stand at the dawn of something rare or the edge of inevitable decline. It is a scientific question wrapped in an existential riddle. The stars whisper in numbers, but in meaning, they remain silent. And so, the paradox leaves us with two choices. We can imagine that life is rare, that we are extraordinary, alone in a vast and indifferent universe. Or we can imagine that life is common, but that we are hidden from it, like children behind a curtain, waiting for the moment when the veil is lifted. This is the crossroads at which the paradox delivers us. One path speaks of solitude, the other of surveillance. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Either the silence is permanent, or it is chosen. Both possibilities are staggering. Both force us to rethink our place in the cosmic story. And with that, the paradox becomes not an end, but a beginning. For if silence is deliberate, then we are not merely isolated, we are observed. If we are observed, then the question shifts from where is everybody to something far stranger. Why are they watching? It is here, standing at the intersection of probability and silence, that the zoo hypothesis enters the stage. It does not dismiss the paradox, it reframes it. If the galaxy is quiet, perhaps it is because we are inside a reserve, a protected sphere. Perhaps the cosmic silence is the sound of an audience holding its breath. Imagine for a moment that we are not alone, but not in the way science fiction usually paints it. No alien fleets blotting out the sky. No sudden radio message from the stars. Instead, silence. A silence that feels intentional. A silence that feels like a gaze. What if this quiet is not emptiness, but policy? What if we are being watched, not contacted? In 1973, an MIT radio astronomer named John Abal proposed an idea so disarming that it shifted the way many thinkers approached the riddle of cosmic silence. He called it the zoo hypothesis. In essence, Ball suggested that humanity might not yet be ready for contact. Advanced extraterrestrials, far older and wiser than we are, may have adopted a principle of non-interference, allowing us to grow and stumble on our own. They might observe us the way we observe animals in a preserve visible, yet untouchable, present, yet unreachable. The comparison is striking. Think of the way we, as humans, treat the wild. We build zoos where animals are protected from extinction, but also confined to invisible boundaries. We create conservation zones where tribes or species are shielded from contact, under the belief that exposure to our civilization could destroy their way of life. To them, we are silent gods always present, but never directly revealing ourselves. Is it so hard to imagine that a civilization millions of years ahead of us might apply the same principle to Earth? That to them, we are a fragile species in the infancy of its intelligence, placed inside a cosmic terrarium, a glass dome of time and space, where every movement is observed but rarely disturbed. This metaphor unsettles as much as it comforts. On one hand, it suggests protection. If Earth is a preserve, then perhaps the galaxy has deemed us worth saving. No cosmic warlords, no harvesting fleets, no galactic predators. Instead, guardianship. A patience that allows us to develop at our own pace. But the darker implication lurks beneath the surface. Protection is not the same as freedom. Zoos are not sanctuaries of equality. They are cages of observation. And conservation zones, however noble in intent, still carry the taste of surveillance, even paternalism. If Earth is a cosmic zoo, then who, exactly, is the zookeeper? John Ball framed the hypothesis as a response to the Fermi paradox, the haunting question. If the galaxy is so old and vast, where is everyone? His answer was simple. They are here. They are just choosing not to announce themselves. They might monitor us through technology so advanced we cannot even begin to detect them. Not radio signals, not spacecraft, not probes we can imagine. Perhaps it is surveillance at the molecular level, the bending of space-time itself, the manipulation of consciousness. To us, invisible. To them, routine. Consider the way we watch other species. Biologists once thought they had to get close, to intrude, to tag, to handle. But in recent decades, new methods of remote observation allow us to monitor animal behavior without disturbing natural patterns. Drones hover at distances. Satellites track migrations. Microchips provide silent data. The animals, unaware, continue their rituals as if untouched. Could it be the same with us? That somewhere above or even within the structures of our world, layers of observation are at work, unnoticed, untraceable, and deliberately concealed? This idea treads on the boundary between wonder and paranoia. It conjures both the beauty of being considered precious and the discomfort of being considered naive. To be protected is to be valued. To be caged is to be diminished. Which is it for us? A sanctuary under watchful eyes, or a display in a galactic museum of civilizations that never reached beyond their cradle? Some have extended the metaphor further. What if Earth is not just a preserve, but an exhibit? Imagine a galactic council, civilizations tens of millions of years old, maintaining a museum of worlds. Each planet frozen in a stage of its development, each species cataloged, studied, compared. Humanity might be one among countless others, a curiosity on a shelf of living history. The comfort fades as the thought deepens. In a zoo, animals rarely know they are in cages. In a museum, artifacts rarely realize they are exhibits. And yet, this hypothesis resonates because it maps so clearly onto our own behavior. When uncontacted tribes are encountered on Earth, anthropologists and governments sometimes choose to protect them by not contacting them, fearing the devastating consequences of exposure. To the tribe, the forest is their universe. To us, it is a boundary we dare not cross, even as we monitor from above with satellites. Could our planet be the interstellar equivalent of the Amazon basin, where the decision has already been made not to interfere until the species reaches a certain threshold? Thresholds, this is where the question deepens. If we are in a zoo, what is the test that earns us release? Is it technological maturity? A unified global civilization? The abandonment of war? The achievement of interstellar flight? Or something subtler, the awakening of consciousness to a higher ethical plane? In this framing, the silence of the universe is not indifference. It is exam time. Humanity is under observation, waiting to see if it passes or fails. And what if we fail? Do civilizations that remain violent, fractured, and self-destructive stay forever quarantined, denied entry into the greater cosmic network? Or are they quietly left to burn out, their planet reduced to another extinct exhibit in the archives of galactic history? These possibilities stir unease, but also humility. The zoo hypothesis forces us to confront the unsettling thought that humanity might not be the protagonist of the cosmos. We may not even be the ones writing the rules of first contact. Instead, we may be subjects in an experiment, observed with curiosity, patience, or perhaps indifference. But here lies the paradox. If this hypothesis were true, could we ever know? By its very nature, the zoo hypothesis implies that the watchers would remain hidden until they chose otherwise. Evidence would be absent by design. Our science thrives on data, but here, absence itself is the data. The silence of the stars becomes the strongest signal of all. And so we are left with the duality, comforting and terrifying, hopeful and disquieting. Are we cherished or are we caged? Guardianship or captivity? Progress under observation or stagnation in confinement? Perhaps, like the animals in our own zoos, we cannot yet distinguish between the glass walls and the sky beyond dot as we gaze upward. The zoo hypothesis reminds us of two truths: that silence may not mean solitude, and that observation may not mean understanding. Whether we are a protected species or an imprisoned one, the question echoes through the cosmos. What role do we play in a galaxy that may already be watching? And with that question, we step toward the next frontier. If we are being observed, what signs, subtle or grand, might reveal the presence of our silent watchers? Could there be hidden fingerprints in the very fabric of our history, waiting for us to uncover? For centuries, human beings have looked at the sky not only with curiosity, but with a strange unease, as if the heavens themselves were more than silent witnesses. What if they were watching us back? The zoo hypothesis rests on that tantalizing premise that we are being observed, perhaps even studied, by civilizations older and wiser than our own. But speculation needs fuel, and across time, fragments of mystery, some etched in stone, others flashing across radar screens, have ignited imaginations. Are these merely tricks of perception, or are they faint fingerprints of alien eyes on Earth? Let us begin with the modern era, where the conversation is loudest: UFOs. For decades, governments and militaries dismiss reports of unidentified flying objects as misinterpretations, weather balloons or optical illusions. Yet the sheer persistence of sightings by pilots, radar operators, and civilians alike suggests a pattern too stubborn to ignore. In recent years, the term itself has shifted. UFOs are now UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. And with that shift came a change in tone. Once taboo, now the subject has crept into congressional hearings and Pentagon reports. Videos released by the U.S. Navy show objects defying our current understanding of aerodynamics, moving without wings, propulsion trails, or predictable flight paths. They accelerate at impossible speeds, stop on a dime, vanish into the ocean. Are these cutting-edge drones natural phenomena or something beyond the human playbook? The answer remains elusive. But the question itself has been legitimized in ways unimaginable only a decade ago. Yet, the whispers are not confined to radar screens. They echo in the ruins of our ancient past. Consider the stone monuments that defy explanation. The Great Pyramids of Giza, aligned with uncanny precision to the stars. The megaliths of Baalbek, whose quarried stones weigh hundreds of tons, moved in ways our modern cranes would strain to replicate. Or the Nazca lines of Peru, vast geoglyphs only fully visible from the sky. To many, these wonders are simply testaments to human ingenuity, perseverance, and the clever use of primitive tools. To others, they are breadcrumbs left by visitors who nudged us along the path of civilization. The so-called ancient astronaut theory, popularized in the 20th century, suggests that alien civilizations may have acted as teachers or even gods in humanity's earliest chapters. Of course, mainstream archaeology firmly resists such claims, pointing instead to cultural evolution, experimentation, and the lost techniques of forgotten engineers. But the suspicion lingers. For if humanity itself places animals in preserves, observing their growth without direct interference might advanced civilizations not have done the same to us. The idea grows more unsettling when we look at the sudden leaps in human progress. For millennia, humanity crawled through prehistory at a slow pace, stone tools giving way to bronze and then iron across tens of thousands of years. Yet, in the past few centuries, progress has exploded exponentially. The transition from horse-drawn carts to moon landings occurred within less than a dozen generations. The jump from bulky telegraphs to handheld quantum processors spans less than 2 centuries. Did we stumble into the right scientific paradigms, or was there a quiet hand nudging the dominoes? Some point to moments that feel almost too timely. the sudden appearance of agriculture across multiple regions simultaneously, the mysteries surrounding the Sumerian knowledge of astronomy, or even the curious surge of patents and breakthroughs following eras marked by unexplained aerial sightings. Correlation is not causation, but correlation can spark unsettling questions. Were we truly alone in building our great leaps, or are our steps accelerated under the watchful gaze of hidden overseers? Then there are the signals, the cosmic flashes that arrive from the depths of space, igniting both wonder and skepticism. Among them are the enigmatic fast radio bursts, or FRBs, discovered only in the 21st century. These millisecond pulses of energy release more power than entire stars emit in years. Most scientists believe they originate from natural sources, such as magnetars or colliding neutron stars. But a tantalizing minority wonder if they could be artificial like the flickers of a cosmic beacon. What if such bursts are the byproduct of technologies we cannot yet imagine, transmissions bleeding into the universe's background hum? Skeptics urge caution, reminding us of past false alarms like the famous WOW signal of 1977, which to this day remains unexplained. But within that skepticism lives a paradox. We search for signs of intelligence in the cosmos, but when anomalies arise, we are quick to tuck them into the drawer of the unknown. Perhaps the very signs of alien watchers are hidden in plain sight, dismissed by our unwillingness to confront the extraordinary. And here lies the heart of the tension, the dual lenses of doubt and belief. Science, at its best, demands rigor, evidence, and repeatability. It resists the seduction of myth. Yet humans, at their core, are storytellers. We weave patterns into the stars, project meaning onto coincidence, and hunger for connection beyond ourselves. Between these two poles, skepticism and wonder, lies the landscape of the zoo hypothesis. If Earth were indeed under observation, what would we expect to see? Maybe unexplained craft dancing across military radars. Maybe anomalies in ancient architecture. Maybe sudden leaps of knowledge that arrive like gifts from nowhere. Or maybe nothing at all, because the perfect experiment leaves no trace of the observer. Imagine for a moment that you were the one conducting the experiment. If you wish to study a species without alerting them, how would you proceed? Would you allow fleeting glimpses, just enough to stir curiosity, but never enough to confirm? Would you ensure that your presence was always ambiguous, always deniable? Would you let them wrestle with mystery, testing their capacity for skepticism and imagination alike? If this were so, then perhaps the very absence of conclusive proof is itself the proof. A watcher determined to remain unseen would never leave evidence beyond speculation. But this perspective cuts both ways. The thought of protection is comforting, like a child under the unseen care of guardians. It suggests that humanity is valued, preserved, even cherished as part of a larger galactic story. Yet the opposite interpretation is darker. Protection can also mean captivity. Observation can slip into control. If Earth is a cosmic terrarium, then we are the specimens, our myths, wars, and discoveries nothing more than notes in an alien logbook. Some find reassurance in the idea that advanced civilizations may care enough to safeguard us from ourselves. Others recoil from the notion that our freedoms are illusions, framed by a cage so vast we cannot perceive its bars. This polarity between wonder and dread is what keeps the zoo hypothesis alive in the imagination. It does not rest on hard evidence. It rests on the human ability to wonder about what evidence we might be missing. Perhaps UFO encounters are misunderstandings. Perhaps FRBs are stellar tantrums. Perhaps the pyramids are nothing more than ingenious feats of human labor. Or perhaps, just perhaps, all these mysteries are threads of a larger tapestry, one in which we are not merely actors, but specimens on display. And so we find ourselves caught between narratives. The skeptic's voice reminds us, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Until proof arrives, caution must prevail. But the dreamer's voice whispers back, extraordinary mysteries demand extraordinary imagination. The lesson, then, is not only about what aliens might do, but about what we already do. Our zoos, our reserves, our anthropological studies, all of them are microcosms of the choices advanced beings make when encountering those less advanced. We stand both as the observer and the observed, projecting our own dilemmas onto the stars. In doing so, we confront not only the possibility of alien intent, but the reflection of our own. To imagine how others might treat us is to reckon with how we treat those we hold power over. And so, the mirror remains, comforting in its possibility of protection, unsettling in its shadow of control. If Earth is a zoo, then we are both cherished and caged, preserved and limited, studied yet left in ignorance. What we cannot know is intent. Are the eyes upon us curious, caring, or cold? The answer may determine not only how we see them, but how we see ourselves. The story of life, when stretched across the vast canvas of time, is not one of steady triumph, but of precarious survival. Species rise and vanish. Civilizations bloom, then crumble into dust. And yet here we are, conscious beings able to look back at this fragile history and forward into the unknown. But perhaps our very existence is balanced on the edge of something larger, a hidden trial known as the Great Filter. The Great Filter is one of the most haunting ideas ever born from the silence of the cosmos. It suggests that although life may emerge often, some barrier, some test prevents it from advancing very far. Somewhere along the evolutionary or civilizational path, most lines of life stumble and fall. The silence we perceive in the universe may not be the absence of life, but the graveyard of countless failed attempts. So the question becomes chilling. If the Great Filter exists, have we already passed it? Or is it still ahead of us? Life on Earth has faced filters before. For billions of years, life remained microscopic, invisible to the naked eye. Complex multicellular organisms only appeared after eons of evolutionary stagnation. Mass extinctions followed asteroids, volcanic winters, planetary ice ages, each a brutal test, eliminating the vast majority of species, while granting a slim chance for others to rise. The dinosaurs ruled for millions of years, only to vanish in a cosmic heartbeat. Their extinction cleared the stage for mammals, and eventually us. But survival was not guaranteed. One shift in conditions, one random stroke of chance, and intelligent life may never have emerged. Was this one of the Great Filters, a nearly impossible hurdle that few planets cross? If so, then perhaps humanity has already defied the odds simply by existing. Yet the thought lingers. Maybe the hardest test is not biological, but civilizational. Every human civilization has faced its own cycle of growth and collapse. The Sumerians, the Mayans, the Khmer Empire all rose with brilliance, innovation, and culture, only to decline into obscurity. Resources depleted. Wars erupted. Climate shifted. The echoes of their downfall serve as warnings, suggesting that collapse is not an exception but a rule. What if this pattern is universal? Civilizations may ignite with promise, but few learn to sustain themselves. The discovery of fire, agriculture, and technology may be common across the stars, but the leap to stability, to mastering survival on planetary and cosmic scales, might be rare. And if this is true, then perhaps we are not merely evolving. We are being tested. Imagine for a moment that the zoo hypothesis is more than passive observation. What if it is an examination hall? Humanity sits unaware, our every choice watched by distant eyes. Do we harness our tools wisely, or do we self-destruct under their weight? Nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, climate change. Pandemics, these may not just be historical challenges, but the criteria of the exam. This possibility reframes the silence of the cosmos. Maybe the reason we hear no voices from the stars is because few civilizations ever pass the test. They collapse during their adolescence, unable to manage the very powers they unleash. Like students unprepared for the final exam, they fail, and their silence becomes part of the cosmic record. We then stand at a pivotal threshold. For the first time in Earth's history, a single species holds planetary-scale power. We can alter the climate, edit the genes of life, and send machines beyond our world. Yet this same power carries within it the seeds of annihilation. Nuclear arsenals can end civilization in hours. Environmental collapse could unravel centuries of progress. Artificial intelligence may outgrow our control. Each of these is a potential filter. Each may decide whether humanity advances or disappears. Nature, too, offers metaphors of this test. Consider the monarch butterfly, fragile yet resilient, migrating thousands of miles through storms and predators. Its survival depends on endurance, timing, and collective behavior. One mistake, one broken link, and the migration fails. Or the salmon, leaping against torrents to return upstream, where only the strongest endure to give life to the next generation. These are filters in miniature, trials designed not by intention, but by necessity. Human civilization mirrors these struggles. We, too, must navigate torrents, technological, ecological, social. Our survival may depend not just on intelligence, but on wisdom, cooperation, and restraint. If aliens watch us, perhaps this is what they are evaluating. Not whether we can invent, but whether we can endure. The idea is both humbling and terrifying. What if our wars, our conflicts, our crises are not random, but the very markers by which our worthiness is measured? To an advanced civilization, interference may be forbidden. To help us cheat would defeat the purpose of the test. So they watch, silent, as we stumble, waiting to see if we will rise or fall. Yet, another possibility exists. Perhaps there is no examiner, no alien gaze, only the indifferent universe itself. The great filter may not be an intentional test, but an impersonal law. Life, by its very nature, evolves towards self-destruction unless it learns to overcome its instincts. In this view, the cosmos does not grade us, but it does set the rules. Those who fail vanish. Those who succeed ascend. Philosophically, the great filter confronts us with a mirror. It asks, are we capable of transcending the patterns that doomed our ancestors? Or are we destined to repeat them on a planetary scale? The fall of Rome, the collapse of Easter Island, the Dust Bowl all whisper a warning. Progress is fragile, and arrogance can blind us. If history is a cycle, then the filter may not be in the distant future. It may be happening now. This raises an unsettling thought. If aliens are indeed observing us, perhaps their silence is not indifference, but patience. They may be waiting to see if we mature enough to join them or collapse into our own extinction. Contact, in this scenario, is not withheld forever. It is contingent, reserved only for those who prove they can endure. And here lies the paradox. The very act of passing the filter may mean becoming something unrecognizable. A civilization that survives its technological adolescence must achieve balance, peace with itself, harmony with its planet, mastery over its tools without succumbing to them. That civilization may appear godlike to us, no longer driven by conflict or greed. To meet such beings would be to glimpse what humanity might become if we succeed. But what if we fail? Then the silence of the stars gains a darker meaning. It becomes not a mystery, but a warning. The night sky is filled with worlds that tried and fell, their voices extinguished. Earth may simply be next. The great filter forces us to confront an existential fork. Either we are rare survivors in a universe of fallen civilizations, or we are fragile candidates about to face our final test. Both possibilities carry weight. Both demand humility. And so, we arrive at the crux. If the zoo hypothesis is evaluative, if we are being watched not merely as specimens, but as students, then our actions now matter more than we realize. Each war avoided, each technology guided wisely, each act of preservation over destruction may tip the scales. Perhaps we are not just living history. We are writing our exam answers in real time. The silence of the cosmos may not be absent. It may be anticipation. The universe waits to see whether we will pass, or whether, like so many before us, we will vanish into the quiet. What if the true frontier of contact is not out there in the void, but in here, inside the mind? For centuries, humanity has pointed telescopes at the sky, listening for radio waves, searching for metallic ships against the backdrop of stars. But perhaps the watchers, if they exist, do not need engines or antennas at all. Perhaps they peer into us through the most intimate of dimensions consciousness itself. That this possibility overturns the foundations of science. It suggests that the search for extraterrestrial intelligence may not require scanning the heavens, but exploring the depths of perception, thought, and reality itself. Could it be that the cosmos is less a stage of matter and energy, and more a theater of awareness, where minds connect across unseen dimensions? Modern physics already hints at strange corridors that defy our intuition. Quantum entanglement tells us that particles separated by vast distances behave as if bound by an invisible thread, their states linked instantaneously. Einstein dismissed it as spooky action at a distance. But what if this strangeness is not a flaw in our understanding? What if it is the very mechanism by which consciousness or observation transcends space? Now imagine a civilization millions of years ahead of us. To them, entanglement might not be a mystery at all, but a tool. Where we see inexplicable mathematics, they may see communication, surveillance, even participation in other minds. We imagine alien ships crossing light years. They might simply tune into frequencies of thought. This speculation invites another. Are we inside a simulation? Philosophers like Nick Bostrom suggest that advanced civilizations might create virtual realities so vast and convincing that the inhabitants never suspect. They are coded beings. If this is true, then aliens are not out there. They may be the programmers, the architects of our reality, observing us like developers monitoring an unfolding game. The zoo hypothesis then becomes something far more unsettling. Not that we are kept in a preserve, but that we are characters in a cosmic simulation, evaluated for reasons we cannot fathom. Are we experiments in evolution, models of history, or entertainment for beings beyond comprehension? Science responds cautiously to such ideas. There is no equation yet that proves consciousness can leap dimensions, no telescope that captures the fingerprint of a simulation. And yet the daring of philosophy and myth fills the silence. Where data ends, imagination steps in. Throughout history, cultures have spoken of watchers. Ancient Mesopotamia told of the Anunnaki, sky beings who descended to shape human destiny. The Book of Enoch describes the watchers, angels, who observed and sometimes interfered with humanity. In Greece, gods peered down from Olympus, unseen judges of mortal behavior. In Hindu cosmology, the devas exist as luminous overseers in higher realms, while in Norse myth, the all-seeing Odin gave one of his eyes to perceive deeper truths. Were these merely stories to explain the unknown or cultural echoes of a deeper reality? If consciousness is indeed a window, perhaps ancient minds glimpsed what modern science hesitates to name: the presence of others beyond our field of vision. But here lies the contrast. Science demands caution, skepticism, repeatable evidence. Philosophy dares to leap into speculation, weaving bridges between the measurable and the imaginable. One warns of illusion. The other invites wonder. Between them lies the human hunger for meaning. Consider dreams. In them, entire worlds arise, governed by logic both strange and intimate. What if dreams are not only the brain's echo chamber, but an interface? A portal through which other intelligences might peek or even communicate. The idea feels fantastical, yet it has haunted mystics for millennia. Shamans, prophets, and visionaries across cultures have claimed to receive wisdom in altered states of consciousness. Science interprets this as neurological patterns. Philosophy sees the possibility of contact. And what of myth's recurring theme of divine tests? Gods who disguise themselves to walk among mortals, judging their kindness or cruelty. What if these are allegories for a cosmic evaluation beings of higher order observing us, not with spaceships, but through the lens of morality, behavior, and collective consciousness? If this is true, then our thoughts, choices, and myths themselves become data. Every act of compassion, every lapse into violence, every dream and vision threads woven into a tapestry being read by unseen eyes. Skepticism rises quickly. Neurology explains visions as misfires of the brain. Simulation theories may be unfalsifiable thought experiments. Entanglement is a phenomenon of particles, not minds. Science reminds us, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And yet, silence itself is not proof of absence. The absence of signals in the stars may force us to reconsider where and how we look. Perhaps the telescope is the wrong tool, and the mind is the true antenna. This tension between science's restraint and imagination's daring is not a weakness, but a compass. The human story has always advanced by walking this edge. Myths inspired exploration, exploration fed data, and data refined myth. Without daring, there is no discovery. Without caution, there is no clarity. So we return to the haunting question. If aliens are watching, how do they watch? Through machinery we cannot detect? Through dimensions our instruments cannot penetrate? Or through consciousness itself, the most intimate and least understood dimension of all? The answer, if it exists, would redefine not only our place in the cosmos, but the very nature of reality. For if perception itself is a window, then perhaps every thought is a signal, every dream a ripple, every myth a memory. And in that case, the watchers are not distant at all. They are woven into the very fabric of our awareness, as close as the breath behind a dream. The zoo hypothesis is not only a theory about aliens. It is a mirror. In imagining ourselves as observed, as creatures studied from afar, we begin to ask a more unsettling question. What exactly would we look like to an outsider? What would our wars, our art, our triumphs, and our failures say about who we are as a species? From one angle, the image is bleak. A planet scarred by conflict, nations divided, weapons stockpiled with the power to end all life. Any observer might see a dangerous species, brilliant in invention, but reckless in wisdom. To them, we might appear not as candidates for contact, but as children playing with fire. Our technologies soar toward the stars, while our ethics lag behind. If the watchers exist, perhaps they withhold contact because they see us not as ready partners, but as an unstable experiment still in progress. And yet, another angle reveals something different. For all our violence, we create music that shakes the soul. Art that captures eternity in a stroke of paint. Poetry that distills the human heart into words. We reach beyond survival to imagine justice, freedom, love. An alien intelligence observing our world might see not only destruction, but also beauty, a paradoxical species. Capable of cruelty, yet also capable of compassion so deep it defies logic. This contrast is the essence of the mirror. To think of ourselves as studied forces us to weigh our own contradictions. Are we more defined by our wars, or by our symphonies? By our greed or by our generosity? By our capacity for destruction or by our longing for transcendence? History gives us patterns that speak to both sides. Civilizations have risen to greatness only to collapse under the weight of their own ambition. Rome fell, the Maya cities emptied, countless empires dissolved into dust. Observers, alien or otherwise, might see this as a warning. Humanity's trajectory could be another cycle of rise and fall, grand yet ultimately fleeting. But history also offers resilience. From the ashes of collapse, new cultures emerge. Knowledge is preserved, reinterpreted, carried forward. Our species has survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters. Each time, we rebuild, often stronger than before. An observer might see in us not just fragility, but endurance, a tenacity that refuses to let the flame of consciousness go out. In this sense, the zoo hypothesis reframes cosmic history itself. We often imagine ourselves as rulers in waiting of the galaxy, destined to explore, colonize, and command. But if we are subjects of study, then our place is humbler. We are not yet masters of the cosmic stage, but actors are still rehearsing. The universe is not ours to rule, but ours to learn from. This shift can feel crushing, stripping us of imagined grandeur. We may not be central, not unique, not chosen. We may be one of countless species, quarantined in our corner of the galaxy, not yet ready to join the wider community. To some, this perspective is despair, the realization that we are insignificant, perhaps trapped, our freedom only an illusion inside a cosmic terrarium. But the mirror can reflect hope as well. If we are studied, it means we matter. Our story is worth watching. Our struggles and achievements are not lost in the void but observed, perhaps even appreciated by eyes beyond our own. The very idea of being part of a greater tapestry, even as subjects, affirms that we belong to something larger than ourselves. More importantly, imagining ourselves being observed can sharpen our choices. If we knew someone was watching, how would we behave? Would we treat one another differently? Would we be more careful with our planet, our technologies, our future? The zoo hypothesis, in this way, is less about aliens and more about accountability. It holds up a mirror that forces us to confront the question: if we were judged by our actions today, what would the verdict be? Philosophically, this transforms the theory into a moral exercise. Whether or not aliens exist, whether or not they watch us, the idea compels us to act as though we are being evaluated not for their sake, but for our own. It reframes the human story as one not only of survival, but of worthiness. Can we prove, to ourselves if not to others, that we are more than destructive primates with clever tools? Can we show that we are capable of wisdom equal to our power, compassion equal to our knowledge, unity equal to our diversity? Seen this way, the zoo hypothesis is less about captivity and more about potential. It reminds us that observation is not only surveillance, it is also recognition. To be watched is to be acknowledged. To be acknowledged is to be significant. And so we stand at the edge of two reflections. One shows despair, a species bound by its flaws, too violent to be trusted, too fragile to matter. The other shows hope, a species in the making, raw but promising, stumbling toward transcendence. The mirror does not decide which is true. We do. This is the ultimate revelation of the zoo hypothesis. It is not a theory of aliens. It is a question of humanity. When we imagine ourselves as the observed, we are really asking, who are we? And more importantly, who do we want to become? If we are inside a cosmic zoo, then every war we fight, every invention we create, every poem we write becomes more than a human event. It becomes data. Our entire history would not just belong to us, but to the gaze of the other. This possibility forces a question few dare to ask. What does our story look like through alien eyes? Perhaps they would see a species defined by contradiction. We are capable of building cathedrals that reach for heaven, yet also trenches that bury millions in mud. We unlock the atom's power, only to split it into both bombs and clean energy. We create art that moves hearts across centuries and machines that threaten to erase cultures in a single generation. To outside observers, we might look less like a unified civilization and more like a pendulum swinging wildly between creation and destruction. And isn't that duality exactly what makes us fascinating? If intelligence elsewhere has advanced far beyond us, then our raw and chaotic adolescence might be the rarest spectacle of all. Civilizations that have already stabilized, mastered energy, and transcended violence may look back on our phase with something like nostalgia or with fear. After all, the same impulses that give us Shakespeare also give us Hiroshima. From their perspective, we are walking a razor's edge, and the outcome is not yet certain. This is where the zoo hypothesis becomes less about aliens and more about us. If we are truly being watched, then the question shifts. What story are we telling them? Are we demonstrating resilience or self-destruction? Are we showing them a species that learns, adapts, and grows, or one that collapses under its own weight? The mirror they hold up to us may be uncomfortable, but it is also clarifying. Because even without aliens, the act of imagining their gaze forces us to reflect on ourselves with uncommon honesty. Take our relationship with nature. For centuries, we treated Earth as a storehouse of resources to extract, forests to clear, oceans to drain. But only recently have we begun to realize that this planet is not an endless vault, but a fragile system in which we are entangled. To an observer beyond Earth, our environmental crisis might look like a test. Will these humans learn to live within limits, or will they drive their cradle into collapse? The answer may not only determine our survival, it may reveal whether we are worthy of stepping into a larger cosmic community. The same applies to our social fabric. We've built civilizations on hierarchies, power struggles, and inequalities that scar generations. Yet we've also created movements for justice, compassion, and human rights. Which of these signals speaks louder to a distant civilization, our cruelty or our capacity for empathy? When aliens look into our mirror, do they see the brutality of empires or the courage of those who resist them? The truth is, they would see both, and the tension between them may be our defining feature. Even our art could be part of this cosmic reflection. Imagine an alien archive of human creativity symphonies, novels, cave paintings, digital films stored, not because they understand them, but because they capture the essence of what it means to be us. From their vantage, art is not frivolous. It is evidence of consciousness. Every myth we tell, from gods walking among mortals to visions of utopias and apocalypses, could be read as signals of our evolving awareness. If they are watching, perhaps they are not interested in our politics or economies so much as in our imagination, the unique human ability to dream worlds into existence. Yet the mirror cuts both ways. To some, the zoo hypothesis paints us as insignificant animals in a cosmic preserve watched, but powerless. To others, it reframes us as precious, a rare species on the verge of transformation, worthy of study and protection. Which interpretation we choose says less about aliens and more about ourselves. Do we see captivity or opportunity? Neglect or guardianship? The mirror forces us to confront our own self-image. Here lies the deepest irony. Whether or not aliens exist, whether or not they are watching, the idea of their observation already changes us. It compels us to rise above petty divisions, to see our species as a whole, and to act as though our choices matter on a cosmic scale. In this way, The zoo hypothesis is less about external beings and more about our internal awakening. It invites us to behave as if we are accountable to the universe, to history, and to the generations yet to come. In the end, perhaps this is the ultimate gift of the mirror. It makes us aware that we are not just drifting through time, but performing a story, one that could echo across stars or vanish in silence. If there are eyes upon us, then the stage is set. The question is no longer, are we alone? It is, what version of humanity will we allow them to witness? Because maybe, just maybe, the real test of the zoo hypothesis is not whether they are studying us, but whether we have the courage to study ourselves. The story begins and ends with silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the vast breathing hush of a universe alive with secrets. When we gaze at the night sky, what greets us is not merely darkness, but a cathedral of stars, each one a possible harbor of life, each one a mirror to our own existence. Yet from all this immensity, not a single confirmed voice answers back. The silence is total, and it is deafening. But perhaps we have misunderstood what silence means. Perhaps silence is not an absence. It may be a form of presence, a choice, a veil, a stage curtain held aloft, hinting at the performance behind it, but never fully lifting. Humanity has long mistaken silence for nothingness. In our history, when the jungle grew still, we thought the predators had gone. Only later did we learn the stillness was their camouflage. When the ocean surface seemed calm, sailors assumed the water safe, unaware of leviathans moving in the depths. Silence often conceals what it does not reveal. Could the cosmos be the same? The zoo hypothesis, the great filter, the whispers of ancient myths all converge here. They remind us that the universe may not be empty. It may be watching, listening, waiting. Silence could be the most eloquent signal of all. And so we stand on our small, blue planet, fragile, radiant, suspended in infinity. A cosmic island, both vulnerable and extraordinary. The paradox of silence no longer appears as a void, but as a question carved into the fabric of reality itself. Not, where are they? But what must we become to be worthy of the answer? This shift is profound. For much of our history, we imagined ourselves at the center of the earth, of creation, of meaning. Then came Copernicus, who showed us we orbit the sun. Darwin, who revealed our kinship with animals. Einstein, who bent space and time. Each revelation displaced us further, yet deepened our connection to the universe. Now, perhaps, comes the most humbling insight of all. We may not be rulers of the cosmos, but one of its countless subjects, observed, studied, tested, perhaps guided in ways invisible. The silence, then, is not discouraging but instructive. It tells us to look inward as much as outward, to measure ourselves not by signals received, but by the civilization we are becoming. If others are watching, they will see our wars, our greed, our destruction of the biosphere. But they will also see our art, our compassion, our restless curiosity. They will see the duality of what it means to be human, destructive yet creative, selfish yet loving, finite yet capable of imagining infinity. This duality mirrors the very cosmos we inhabit, violent supernova birthing elements that become the seeds of life. Black holes tearing apart matter even as they sculpt galaxies. Creation and destruction, entwined in a dance as old as time. Humanity, in its own microcosm, reflects this cosmic rhythm. And so the question becomes, in the face of silence, how shall we live? Do we despair, imagining ourselves insignificant, caged, and ignored? Or do we choose hope, embracing the possibility that our role is not to wait passively for contact, but to become the kind of civilization worthy of being contacted? This is not science fiction. It is a call to responsibility. Just as we place animals in reserves hoping they thrive, Perhaps some greater intelligence has placed us here with the same intent. The difference is that our fate is not predetermined. We are the gardeners of our own world, the stewards of our own future. Imagine Earth as it appears from the Voyager 1 probe, a pale blue dot drifting in a sunbeam. Carl Sagan called it a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, a reminder that every war, every empire, every hero and coward, every mother and child lived and died on that speck. To those hypothetical alien eyes, we are no larger than that mote. But significance is not a matter of scale, it is a matter of meaning. The meaning we forge, the civilization we build, the compassion we extend to one another, these may be the very qualities that determine whether silence is broken. In a sense, the zoo hypothesis is less about extraterrestrials and more about us. It forces us to confront ourselves. Are we mature enough to handle knowledge of the other? Are we ethical enough to share existence without domination? Are we wise enough to survive our own adolescence as a species? Silence sharpens these questions, like a mirror reflecting our deepest truths. It does not tell us what lies beyond, but it demands we prepare for the day we find out. And preparation, in this context, means living as though we are already being observed. Because, perhaps we are taught in the myths of old, humanity often imagined gods watching from the sky, Zeus hurling thunderbolts, Odin sacrificing for wisdom, the watchers of the Book of Enoch descending to mingle with mortals. Whether divine or alien, the motif remains the same. Beings beyond us, watching, judging, shaping destinies unseen. Today, science may replace gods with galaxies, but the archetype lingers. We sense that our story is not entirely our own. Yet mythology also reminds us of another truth. The greatest transformations occur not when gods intervene, but when humans rise to meet the challenge themselves. Prometheus steals fire, not because the gods gave it freely, but because humanity reached for it. In the same way, perhaps we should not expect revelation from the stars. Perhaps we must create our own revelation through survival, through knowledge, through becoming more than we are today. The silence of the cosmos, then, becomes a canvas for meaning. We can paint it with despair, imagining ourselves prisoners of a galactic zoo. Or we can paint it with hope, seeing it as an invitation to grow, to evolve, to take responsibility for the fragile world we've been given. Both interpretations are valid, but only one leads to progress. In this final reflection, let us return to the paradox that began our journey, the Fermi paradox. If life should be everywhere, why have we found none? Perhaps because the search is not only outward, but inward. The universe's silence is a mirror, urging us to ask, have we become the kind of civilization worth discovering? Or are we still infants, grasping at weapons, blind to the fragility of our home? This is the ultimate test. Not whether aliens exist, but whether we can survive long enough to matter if they do. In the end, cosmic silence may be the greatest gift of all. It grants us time. Time to grow, time to learn, time to transform. It challenges us to find wonder not in answers, but in questions. It asks us to embrace humility, to cultivate awe, to live as though our choices ripple beyond the stars. And so we leave the story where it began, with Earth, a fragile, radiant jewel suspended in infinity. Our home, our test, our stage in the cosmic theater. Whether we are watched or alone, our responsibility is the same: to become something extraordinary, something enduring, something that justifies our existence in the vast ledger of the universe. For perhaps the greatest contact is not a signal from the stars, but the awakening of our own cosmic consciousness. A realization that we are not just inhabitants of a planet, but participants in a universe alive with mystery. The silence remains, but within that silence, there is wonder. And within that wonder, there is hope. Not the hope of being rescued, but the hope of becoming. Not the hope of being found, but the hope of learning to see. And in that hope lies the spark of destiny, to live as though the universe is already watching. Because, in ways we cannot yet comprehend, it just might be.